Welcome to the Beyond the Mat podcast, an in-depth talk show discussing exclusively WWE topics.
My name's Rick Boogs, and I came to rock with the Beyond the Mats podcast that is beyond the M-A-T-T podcast. Ah!
All right, we're here for Beyond the Mat. It is July 10th, 2022. We're going to talk about Smackdown from Friday night this week, but also some other WWE topics. I got Brad here with me. Going to take a look at the bigger picture in WWE as we're getting ready for Summerslam. I want to remind all of you before we get into it to subscribe on any podcast platform that you use. Leave a 5-star rating or a review. Also find us on patreon.com/beyondthemat. And follow me on Twitter at BeyondMatWWE. I got Brad with me tonight to talk about WWE a little bit. How you doing, Brad?
Matt, great to be on, man.
How's everything been going? Did you enjoy Smackdown last night?
I liked Smackdown. I hit a jackpot in Atlantic City this weekend, and I got my car smashed up by a deer tonight. So we've had a very interesting weekend, and I enjoyed Smackdown. I would give it about a 7 out of 10, 7.5, something like that.
Yeah, I think, you had Roman Reigns on the show, so that's supposed to make it feel bigger. To me, it really didn't make a difference, except for they were able to have Paul Heyman out there cutting a promo that basically satisfied Roman Reigns, and he basically cut a promo for both guys in the match. He put over Lesnar, he put over Reigns, and did it like no other man can. So that led me to think, in the future, when Roman Reigns is done and Paul Heyman's continuing to do his thing, which current WWE superstar would you like to see Paul Heyman be the advocate for?
Ooh, that's interesting. Maybe Theory doesn't really need it, but Roman doesn't really need it. Maybe Austin Theory, man, down the line.
I'm thinking Madcap Moss.
Well, depends on how big he can ascend, because I think with Heyman, you got to have a real top guy.
He had Cesaro one time.
Yeah.
Silence is what that one deserves.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think it'll be Madcap Moss. I'm just being a goofball about it. But it's interesting. I'm sort of almost like excited about the possibility of him representing somebody else besides the Bloodline. I kind of can't wait for that.
Yeah, that is exciting, man. It is exciting. And it's also exciting to think of him as a head writer. And I was actually thinking about this today. I know he gets involved in a lot of his segments. He has a lot of say, obviously, into what happens. And if you notice, for the last, 12 months, not just because he's the champion, but Roman's storylines just have been the best and obviously enhanced by him. I think that he has a genius creative mind, man, towards wrestling and just knowing what works and what's going to get people excited and interested. And he has a way of doing it that I think would expand very nicely to the entire roster if given that opportunity.
Yeah, he was at one time the lead writer for Smackdown and isn't anymore, but that's definitely a direction they should definitely go in, is having Heyman heavily involved in the overall creative, at least for one of the shows, and then, have somebody else doing it on Raw. Obviously, the current person leading it probably won't be leading it for that much longer, fortunately. I don't want to get into all that stuff because I'm here to talk about the wrestling, not the news that's going on being reported by the Wall Street Journal and all that stuff. So, but yeah, Paul Heyman's creative ability, definitely something that WWE could benefit from. And, you know, have you noticed sort of over the last, say, maybe since March, just before WrestleMania, and certainly the last like month or two, haven't the shows felt a lot different than they did in the winter and the fall and the early spring? They just flow so much different. It feels like there's so much more stuff of consequence.
Yeah. With ironically, the exception of last night's SmackDown, unless I'm missing things that you're going to point out, I feel like last night's SmackDown had a lot of things that maybe like weren't that important. A lot of things that you could miss and it wouldn't matter. But I agree with you, especially on Raw, more so. Raw has been like, you know, much better flowing. It doesn't feel like 3 hours of dragging on as much as it did maybe January, December type of thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely think Raw's been a better show than SmackDown, I think, overall, like recently. But yeah, it feels like we get more wrestling matches, less nonsense, you know, and sometimes you got to have the talking segments and the stuff backstage and all this, but even those segments have been smaller, fewer and far between, and just not carrying as much weight on the show as they have. They've really moved from match to match to match to match. Now, last night on SmackDown, when we talk about things of consequence, we had Natalya totally get squashed by Ronda Rousey, which earned Ronda Rousey a rematch with Liv Morgan at SummerSlam. We also had Drew McIntyre and Sheamus advertised to be facing each other for a match with the Universal Unified Champion at Clash at the Castle. Sheamus ended up pretending like he had COVID-19, which I thought that whole thing was interesting. You know, they didn't want to mention COVID-19 on the air for the longest time, and now we got a guy working into a storyline as to why he cannot fight. So Butch ended up taking on McIntyre. Obviously, they're doing similar as they did to the qualifying for the Money in the Bank match. They're having this Sheamus and McIntyre thing drag out as much as they can, so he'll probably have to run through Ridge Holland first, who he gave the Future Shock DDT to as soon as he tried to attack him after the match. So I don't think Holland's going to last too long with McIntyre either. But so that's a consequence there. The match with Liv Morgan, consequence there. New Day gets their ass kicked, consequence there. Stop coming out here with your ass beating tickets because you got your ass beat. Theory teased a little bit, you know, what he wants to do. And I honestly didn't see the point of it. I actually liked his promo when he was backstage, but him running around the ring with the briefcase almost took away, like, for me, the mystique and of him having the briefcase. If he's just going to show up every time Roman Reigns does and say nothing and say, hey, I had the briefcase, I think that's just a bait and switch.
Yeah. It's funny because it was very like almost childlike the way he ran around the ring. What would have been cool is if he got up and maybe on the outside ropes or something because he didn't want to get in there with all the Usos and Roman, but said, you know, I got this briefcase and I just want you to remember that. Like anything. I didn't like the running around the ring, man.
Yeah, I think if he would have just had a mic and said, like, listen, you better be careful in that match because I got this briefcase and, I can do something with it. Whatever the hell he wants to say. But, they just had him show up at the grill position as we went into the commercial and then...
Which was cool. That part was cool.
Yeah, that was a good cliffhanger because it was like, what's he going to do? And then comes back, not there. promo happens, Heyman does his thing, and then he comes out and runs around the ring, and nobody really cares. Gets booed and everything. That's great, and that's part of it. They want him to, continue to get booed, and people continue to hate him, and him continue to tease it, and not because, if you're in attendance, you're probably like, oh, Austin Theory, he might cash in right now. He might get a Roman Reigns match right now. And then he just runs around the ring and goes back. So I can see the heat there, but at the end of the day, it's not worth how dumb it looks. So,
yeah. Have you noticed Theory getting, I mean, I guess it's logical, but I saw some people with the bowing motion towards him. I saw some people, some women cheering in the crowd for him. I noticed a little bit like much more of a reaction for him, even on a positive side. A lot of people cheering for Austin Theory. It was interesting because you normally don't see that,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I noticed it as much as you, but I probably wasn't really looking for it.
Yeah, it definitely happened.
I guess Theory's got some fans, but we open up with that promo with Roman Reigns, Usos, Paul Heyman kicking off the show. Now, I'll tell you this, when Roman enters the same as when he did with the Riddle match, when he enters the building, it feels like a star's entering the building. Yeah, or not the building, but when he enters the arena, much more than it does when really anybody else comes out. McIntyre is supposed to be a star. If he feels big when he comes out, but when Roman enters, regardless of if people don't like him or like him, and even he said he hears boos over here, cheers over there, the attention and everybody stands up. It just feels like a superstar is coming out, and that's what you want for your top champion. And I'll also say this about him being the unified champion and other belts or other top titles being absent right now. It's actually kind of a good thing if you look at it from the standpoint of that clearly defines him as the guy, the top guy that everybody, no matter who they are, is striving for to beat, whether they're in a program doing something else. And I'm everybody on the male side, not women's, but if he's the top guy with both belts, no matter what, every single wrestler wants a piece of that, whether that's part of their storyline or not. That's the stakes at which everything that's happening is going to. And so if you look at it that way, it kind of, enhances things and is a good thing rather than having the title with somebody wrapped up in them and only being defended against whoever they're currently feuding with. So there is sort of a positive to him having it and other guys not being able to fight for any champion or any championship, because it clearly defines him as the top guy, and it makes everybody else, not the top guy, but also have something that they're all striving for. Even if it's not there, they're still all clearly defined as less than the top guy and need to become that top guy. See what I'm saying?
Absolutely, man. I mean, I think the one thing that I would like to see is the ability to challenge for one of the championships and not both. And from the way they're making it sound, Austin Theory said, I will be the new unified, Universal Champion, WWE Universal Champion, whatever. So I don't like that you can't just take one of the belts, it seems like, ever now. I don't really know where they're going with it. Obviously, no one does, but your point is correct. Your point is correct. He's the top guy. There's no doubt about it. And it felt like this time when he entered, there was just more oomph to it than on previous shows. For whatever reason, the crowd seemed, this seemed like, December of 2021 Roman entrance rather than what we were seeing in June of 22 Roman entrance on this SmackDown.
This felt like a big one. And but part of him not being there every week makes it a bigger treat, and he's going to get a bigger reaction when he comes out. And so he comes out here. He's got Heyman saying he loves him. Heyman's shaking his, sitting there shaking. Roman Reigns notices it, wants to give him the mic, and shaking like a leaf, grabs the mic, says, "I love you. Love the Usos. We have a problem." His name's Brock Lesnar. He's most dangerous when he's backed into a corner. He's beating The Rock. He was 24. I think he was actually 25 when he beat The Rock. Beating the Undertaker's streak. Right now, Brock is backed into a corner, and he's scared. And Roman will have to be the most violent he's ever been and smash Brock Lesnar. Then he puts over Roman and everything. He puts over Lesnar. Theory came out with the briefcase, ran around the ring. I think with the one title, with the Money in the Bank, to me, I thought that it was supposed to be you're only allowed to challenge for one title. And now you got Theory saying this stuff about having both of them. But let's just say that it is you only can challenge for one title. Let's say he cashes in and joins the last man standing match, doesn't wait for it to be over, and makes it a triple threat match and cashes in for just the WWE title. It changes that whole match to being just for the WWE title. And then even if Lesnar wins and it's a failed cash in for Theory, the match then becomes just for the WWE title and not both. Lesnar wins it, gets one off of Reigns, and walks away. That's one way I could see things happening if it's stipulated that only one belt can be won with the Money in the Bank briefcase. That's a way to get Theory to do that, to fail the cash in, get the title off of him being Roman, and then move on from that. That's not actually what I think will happen, but that's just sort of a out there idea that I thought of.
It's a really cool idea. And, I think something's going to happen on Raw this coming week with Theory and Lesnar. I can't see who Lesnar is going to confront or who will confront Lesnar if not Theory. So I think you'll have something like that, and there'll be heat between all three, and you might be setting something like that up, which would be, to me, an incredible situation. See, I want to hear more on WWE television about what you're talking about now. I want to hear more about, is there one championship? Is there two? Are they two combined into one? Are we, what is challengeable? What is not? I think that would be really interesting for the audience to hear about. And, just getting back to the Roman promo, one other thing, and I do want to stay on this topic for a minute with you, because I think what you just brought up was incredibly interesting. But I did find it interesting that Roman talked about his health. I'm healthy now. I'm feeling good. I'm back at work. I wonder if this absence had something to do with his health. I mean, obviously, none of us can be sure. But I did find it interesting that, he only has 4 appearances the whole year or 5 the whole year. And all of a sudden he's on this random Smackdown in Fort Worth, Texas, that really he didn't need to be on. So I wonder if, some of this was health related, and that's why he brought it up, because there was almost no reason to bring that up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think he may have just been talking about it in the context of, he had the one match with Riddle, time off, can relax, doesn't have to get beat up every week. But then again, if there is something with his health, WrestleMania, we all thought his shoulder got ripped out of its socket. And then I don't remember when it ended up. I guess that wasn't the case. It was all work. Maybe he did have an injured shoulder. Randy Orton had back issues, and the whole reason why they did the triple threat, not the triple threat, the 3-on-3 6-man tag match at Backlash, as opposed to the unified tag title match, was because Randy Orton's back was flaring up so bad that they needed to buy some time before they could have that unification match. So that's why they went with the 6-man match. Now, I don't know what the plan was as far as McIntyre and Reigns at that time, if they were going to get involved in anything. Probably not. But I think that that pay-per-view was supposed to carry that unification match until Orton was hurt and they, bought some time. They got the match in. Obviously, what happened, and Orton's on the shelf now for a while. So, but my point is that was not something publicized at all. We didn't know what the hell they were waiting for. A lot of people might not even have known that's what they were waiting for until I just said that, or why that 6-man tag even happened. But it happened because Orton was hurt and they needed to maintain, having the Usos versus RK Bro in some capacity. Put McIntyre and Reigns in there. Orton barely did anything in that match. He was selling at the end of it, So other than his spots, he really didn't do much. So they protected him a lot. And I just feel like what you're saying is certainly a possibility, because we don't ever know about that kind of stuff until well after the fact.
Yeah. I just found that pretty interesting that he was bringing that up. And it looks, again, going back to your idea of Theory having a failed cash in and Brock Lesnar ending up as one of the champions. I just, I don't know if it's in the cards to make Brock just lose again. I don't know if that's what's going to really happen. Look, he is a top guy, no matter what people think of him, whatever. He's always there when they need him, lately, especially. He's doing a lot here. And I think that, to have him just go out there and lose to Roman, even in a tough match again, that will decrease him a lot. I don't know if that's what they're going to want to do, man. I think they might want to put a title back on him. He's one of the biggest draws in the whole thing. I think people will be shocked by it. I think everyone thinks it's a foregone conclusion that Roman's just going to win. Almost too obvious, kind of like Becky winning Money in the Bank. They like to screw around with people. They like to make you think one thing and give you something different. I just, I don't know if this is a foregone conclusion that Roman just walks away with both championships and that's the way SummerSlam ends.
What if Lashley said, "Listen, kid," to Theory, "you want me to put my U.S. title on the line? You put your briefcase on the line." And that match is for the briefcase and the U.S. title. Lashley wins the briefcase. Lashley cashes in.
That would make Raw awesome. That would make everything awesome. I'm also wondering, I just saw it tonight because I'm about to buy tickets for it for the Madison Square Garden Raw that's coming up on the 25th of July, in a few weeks, that the main event is Roman Reigns and the Usos versus Riddle and the Street Profits. That's the main event for that night. They're really pushing this Raw. It's New York City. They're already announcing matches for it and stuff. I'm wondering why Riddle? Why would that be Riddle? And then we see Riddle this week is going up against Theory, right, on Raw this coming Monday. Am I correct? Didn't we see an advertisement for that on Smackdown?
Yeah, he is going against Theory. I don't understand where they're going with that. That's obviously just a filler build match for the two of them, because Riddle's clearly in a program with all the house shows right now. The main event's been Rollins and Riddle, and Rollins is involving himself in everything Riddle's been doing. So I guess we're going to get a match with him in Theory, which is obviously going to get Riddle more over as a babyface, Theory hated more as a heel, and Seth's going to do something, in this one. I mean, Jesus Christ, he tried to give a second curb stomp to Ezekiel and got RKO'd by Riddle. I don't know where the hell Riddle came from, but yeah.
My point is, maybe this whole thing gets really convoluted with Rollins and Riddle and Theory and briefcases and Lashley, and I could just see, maybe something weird like that happening. there's something in me that's telling me that Theory's just not going to have the briefcase by the time SummerSlam comes around. He's already got his plan laid out. The plan's being talked about. It's going to be at SummerSlam, this and that. Is there any way that you foresee something like that happen where maybe Riddle beats him and there's some sort of, the briefcase starts getting passed around for the next few weeks?
Possible. There's been matches for the briefcase before, I don't see any reason why it can't happen. And I don't see any reason why it shouldn't happen. I still don't think Theory is the person who should be carrying that briefcase. If they wanted to have him win, the Money in the Bank match and totally be hated because of that, that's one thing. But for him to have it and basically do nothing with it but antagonize, and then, it's just not believable for him to cash in and beat anybody. And if he does, it would be a crying shame for him to be carrying one of the top titles. Now, and
potentially carrying 3 titles, because it is entirely possible that you have Lashley losing to Theory at SummerSlam, then Theory cashing in and taking the unified universe. So he's going to have the WWE Championship, the Universal Championship, and the U.S. Championship all at the same time. I mean, theoretically, according to what we're hearing, that's possible right now, right?
Yeah, I think part of what we're, is being told to us by commentary and told to us by Theory is, it's a old-fashioned bait and switch. They're trying to make us think that they're going to go back to the Seth Rollins cash in from WrestleMania 31, where he cashes in on this big match and takes advantage of wounded Roman Reigns and wounded Brock Lesnar. I think the fact that Seth's talked about it, that Drew's talked about it, that Riddle's talked about it, that Theory's talking about that's his plan. I think all of that is an indication that that's not what's going to happen. And I just think that if they keep him with the briefcase for months and months and months, it's just going to get really annoying. And they need to do something. So whatever they're going to do, it's going to be something that we're not expecting. And I don't see him cashing in at SummerSlam. He'll lose the briefcase before I see him cashing in at SummerSlam. But and then of course they have the match that for Clash of the Castle. Eventually we're going to get Sheamus versus Drew for that match. Obviously Sheamus is not winning that. And that match is advertised as being for the Universal Unified Undisputed Champion, whatever. So is that to indicate that the titles won't be split by then? That's a little bit annoying.
That's the way I took it. And I think that with an event that big that you're advertising, and that event's almost sold out. I mean, what are you going to have, 70,000 people there? Something like that. So at that Clash of the Castle, you're going to have 1 million people, and they're getting gypped if they're not getting a unified Universal Championship match. Now, could you say, it's just for the Universal or it's just for the WWE? I guess, but they're selling tickets under that premise. So I just find this whole thing to be extremely weird. Now, if it's not Roman with the title, I think that's also going to be a huge disappointment to the fans in attendance. If Theory takes that belt and it's Theory versus Drew McIntyre as the main event, that's not what people are paying hundreds and hundreds of euros or pounds for in the UK to see. So this is all getting really, really interesting, man. I just want to see some sort of mix up where it's Riddle and Rollins and Theory. Somehow this briefcase gets tied up in all of it. I don't know how. I don't understand the stipulation of you can never challenge Riddle for the unified Universal Championship again. What was the point of that if it wasn't going to come back to bite him in the ass in some way? So there's so many questions left to be unanswered. And that's what I feel like is missing right now from television, is that we're not getting any of those answers. We're really not. I mean, the idea of a Riddle Seth Rollins feud, sure, they're two great wrestlers. It's awesome. Yes, it's cool. But it doesn't have any stakes to it or anything really that important, just like Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins didn't. And to me, and I know to a lot of other people, that's not as exciting as something with something on the line. So
I think going back to what I was saying earlier is that all these non-title feuds, if you look at them at the way of, these are guys without the title that are jockeying for position to get their shot at Roman at whatever point. That's what makes it have stakes versus just being a good wrestling match. But I also feel exactly the same way, that Rollins and Riddle are, two of the best, two of my favorite. Great match. Doesn't really mean anything unless it means that the winner is going to move on to something else. Now, obviously, hopefully the winner moves on and has more of a chance to get into a number one contender's position. I still think Drew's going to win his match at Clash of the Castle, but if it's for both, I don't think he's winning both titles. And so, I don't know what they're going to do, man. With everything that's in flux in WWE right now, they could be changing all kinds of plans. So.
But what's interesting about what you just said is Riddle and Rollins, it's a great match. There's no stakes on the line, obviously, which would make it better. But then you have out of nowhere, why is Sheamus the guy that is going against Drew to see who main events Clash at the Castle? Okay, I like Sheamus as much as the next guy, but I'm just saying, why would there not be some sort of, hey, let's vie for who's going to get this match against McIntyre? Even if it was some sort of tournament that came down at the end to, Riddle versus McIntyre, or Rollins versus McIntyre, or Rollins versus Riddle for that right. Why all of a sudden is it just, it's either Sheamus or Drew? Who's it going to be?
Yeah, I don't understand why it's got to be a Sheamus and Drew feud for this. I mean, if you
you could have given weeks of meaningful television with a little tournament like that. I just, when I heard, the winner gets Clash of the Castle. Okay, why Sheamus? What did he do to earn it? He finished sixth in Money in the Bank. What did he do? You know what I mean? I'm not knocking their creative. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying, if we're going to have meaningless Riddle Rollins matches, then why would we have a meaningful Drew Sheamus match?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I think it just boils down to Drew is the one that they want to face there, and they are trying to put something as a way for him, some kind of obstacle for him to earn it. Sheamus is somebody who's worked with Drew a million times. They work well together, whatever. And then they can do all this shit with the Brawling Brutes and have him face each one of them, and then face Sheamus at some point. He's going to face Sheamus at SummerSlam probably for the right to have the Clash of the Castle match. That's what I think is probably going to happen. We're going to hit a break here, and then we'll be right back. We'll continue talking about this stuff here. Remind you guys, join us patreon.com/beyondthemat, and follow us on Twitter at BeyondMatWWE. We're available on all podcast platforms. Patreon, $1 a month. Get rid of the ads. We'll be right back after this.
The Beyond the Mat podcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Beyond the Mat podcast.
So, talking about Roman Reigns here, What do you see happen? What's your gut tell you about the Lesnar match?
My gut tells me it's not going to just play out that Roman is just they're going to beat the hell out of each other. You know, Brock's going to be down for 10. Roman's going to basically be down for 9 or something like that. Roman's going to win in a really hard-fought, exhausted match. Then Theory's going to come in and cash in and either pass or fail. Who the hell knows? I just don't think it's going to be like that, man. I don't know why. I just think it would just be too obvious. Do you know what I'm saying, man? It's just too obvious. I'm not saying that Brock's going to just win.
They're telegraphing that shit. I mean, that's why I agree. It's too obvious. I still think Theory is going to lose the briefcase to somebody. I just don't know how it's going to happen, because let's just say it is Lashley. Then Lashley would have the briefcase and the U.S. title. He ain't cashing in that night. He's going to probably have to drop the U.S. title if he's going to cash in and win any kind of, I don't know. My head's getting in a knot thinking about it. But at the end of the day, to me, the Money in the Bank cash in has to be for one of the titles, so they can get one of the titles off of Roman Reigns. All these unified, undisputed championship matches, to me, are too predictable. I don't see them having Lesnar beat Roman Reigns, although Lesnar's done the job at WrestleMania. He did the job at however many times he's faced Roman in the past couple of years. He's lost every time. So is he going to continue to just lose? What the hell is going to happen here? And that's what's making it confusing for me, is that match itself, even without Money in the Bank being involved. Why is Lesnar just getting his ass kicked now? But I understand now about Roman Reigns needing to be built up. Maybe they feel that the WrestleMania match didn't live up to expectations, and they need to, go back and do this last man standing match to really make Roman look a lot stronger than just winning off of a sudden spear. But I don't know, man. I just think that at the end of the unifying of the title is fine if the title holder is going to be around, and he's not. So at the end of the day, it's hard for me to sit here and predict something when what I want is for the title to not be unified so that it can be defended by somebody who's actually present on television every week. And at the same time, I like them being unified because it makes it more important. But if the unified title holder is not going to be there, then they shouldn't be holding it.
Man, you're right on every level. I mean, they can take a page out of what happened with Liv Morgan and seeing, the excitement in that moment and how, how much that got everyone hyped up. A lot of people at least. And maybe do something with that briefcase where it does end up on Riddle, and Riddle does close SummerSlam as the WWE champion somehow after outlasting and exhausted Brock and Roman, where he comes in middle of the match because he now has the briefcase. And then maybe that gets us into the next few weeks into a big Seth and Riddle thing where, Seth and Riddle are going back and forth for that WWE championship. I just think you can't end that show with Roman standing tall with both belts and then potentially a failed cash-in by Theory. That would be a very boring way to end SummerSlam, and it wouldn't have the juice. It can't happen that way, man. It's going to have to happen with someone having one belt, and there's no reason why you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, the Reigns winning and then the failed cash-in thing basically just makes Reigns look even stronger than he already does, having defeated Lesnar in the last man standing and then survived the cash-in afterwards. So that would be the rationale for doing that. I would not do that because They need to move on from this unified title crap and him not being there and only being present on pay-per-view. I mean, it's great that everybody else is getting more TV time and we're getting good wrestling matches and whatever, but they can do all that with the champion being on TV as well. And so at the end of the day, I think something's going to happen at SummerSlam that gets one of the titles off of him. If it doesn't, then if it doesn't happen by Clash, if it doesn't happen by the end of the Clash of the Castle pay-per-view, then I don't know what the hell they're doing.
I agree, man. This is the perfect. I've been saying since Roman had the unified championship that Money in the Bank is going to be the only opportunity, or the Money in the Bank briefcase is going to be the only opportunity to get one off of him. I mean, what are you going to do? You're just going to have him lose some random match to Drew McIntyre and then he's going to have no belts and that's it for Roman? I mean, does he really want to retire essentially from WWE or just kind of appear now and then and just random matches? Oh yeah, he's facing The Rock, everyone cool, yeah, like great and all, and everyone will be hyped up for that, but I can't, man, this is the only opportunity to get one belt off of him. You have to do it. You have to do it with this method. And again, Theory has many years to go. I mean, Theory is 12 years younger than Riddle, as you know, as I think a lot of our listeners know. This is not an opportunity for Riddle. I think that this match here on Monday night is going to be very consequential. I think it's going to set something up. And I think you're going to have a situation where we're not so sure where that briefcase is going. And it just can't end up with a non-shocking moment at SummerSlam. SummerSlam is one of their biggest pay-per-views, right, Matt? I mean, it's a big moment. I mean, Clash of the Castle is, say what you want. It's not SummerSlam. It's just not.
Yeah, it's a big deal because it's a big stadium and it's their first time doing an event like that in the UK in like 30 years. So, and McIntyre's, from the UK, I just feel like that is a good time to take it all, to have McIntyre win. But yeah, SummerSlam is, basically their summer WrestleMania. So.
And Drew is I wouldn't be so, and I love Drew, but I wouldn't be so sure that 75% of that crowd isn't rooting for Roman in that match.
I don't know. In United Kingdom, McIntyre probably has a lot of fans. I would think.
I would think too, but look. That crowd is going to be very excited to see Roman Reigns, no matter where Drew McIntyre's from or grew up or anything like that. They're going to be very hyped up to see him, man. I mean, this is they don't get this shot often. They don't have Raws and Smackdowns there. So I don't know, man. I don't know if Drew McIntyre is the plan and that's what we're going to do, then what? I'm sure they're thinking that. Then what? Then what do we do? So we have Drew McIntyre now is both belts. We have a Roman who's not a champion anymore. And now what do we do? Where do we go from here? I don't know, man. I think it's got to happen at SummerSlam, and it's got to happen with the cash in, and the briefcase needs to change hands. And you can get Theory back. Maybe that was part of why Theory lost his belt to begin with to Lashley, is that, Theory has loses the briefcase, looks like a total schmuck, but he has an incredible showing to get that championship back from Lashley at SummerSlam, which, cements him as, okay, he's still legit, Yeah. Maybe that's part of why they're doing this.
Yeah. And part of why they may be advertising everything as the Undisputed Universal Championship match, and why Theory's saying he's going to cash in for the Undisputed Universal Championship, even though Michael Cole said a million times that the winner of the briefcase gets a shot at one championship. maybe all that advertising and talk by theory is just all a way to get the fans to think, okay, the Money in the Bank winners going after both titles, and this match at Clash of the Castle is going to be for both titles, but really one of them is going to be off of Roman by the time we get there. And maybe the cash-in will just be for one title, and they're just trying to drill it into people's head that said it's going to be for two, so everybody thinks, there's no way that Theory can win this, and then something else happens. He either cashes in for one, and now, like I say, if he cashes in during the match, Lesnar can win the match and win one belt. He could also cash in after the match and just take one belt. But I think that it's more likely he cashes in during the match but loses, and Lesnar wins the one title because the match changes to just for the WWE title.
Yeah, which would be a cool way to end that show. Because you could have Roman, really not even being involved in the finish, and obviously, as everyone knows, and losing only one of his belts, and still having a huge match with McIntyre at Clash of the Castle. I mean, that could be, a really interesting way to end it. But, then you have, obviously, you're going to have Brock at Clash of the Castle. You're going to have, there's so many directions, man. I just hope they don't keep this Money in the Bank briefcase on Theory. And that's why, and you can make Raw really, really important the next 3 weeks, culminating with a huge night at Madison Square Garden as a Raw right before SummerSlam, which is almost a pay-per-view. Almost.
Yeah. We'll see what happens, man. They got going, that's the go-home show. You got the Usos and Profits in a 6-man match ahead of their title match. Their title match at Money in the Bank was outstanding. Probably one of the better tag matches that we'll see all year. I said this before, the best part about that match was that they did everything they did. It was so great, but they didn't empty out the tool bag for all of their movesets. They didn't hit all their finishers. They didn't go for everything they go for. So they left a lot of meat on the bone to be able to work another match and include completely different move psychology. So I think that that's something that we're going to see at SummerSlam. Like, you could say, oh, another rematch, but it's going to be a completely different match because it'll be a typical Usos match, and, there'll be typical high spots from the Street Profits, but the way that they work towards their finishers will be different. And I think that's what will make the SummerSlam match maybe even top the Money in the Bank match between those two teams.
No, very salient point by you. And Matt, again, I have to ask you this because I'm not really sure of your thoughts on this, but why are they mixing up Riddle and Roman again on the Raw before SummerSlam? Is that just because it's a good match? Or is there going to be something deeper to that than a good match?
I don't know. When you just told me what was advertised, I didn't even know that was what was advertised for it. Maybe it's just to have your top baby face and your top heel on the Madison Square Garden show, 'cause it's an important show to sell tickets. Obviously that's why they have everything advertised, because they want to sell all the tickets for MSG. But
sure,
I don't know,
sure,
man.
But then why not have just a face off between Brock and Roman, which is the match? Why a match with Riddle? Because obviously, look, because based on what we know and what you were just talking about, right? We know who the enemies here are, right? The enemies are Street Profits, Usos. Okay, that's 2-2 on that tag team match. And then the other one is Roman and Riddle. Kind of like what we had with Roman and Drew and, the Usos and RK Bro. you know who the two enemies are. It's Jey Uso versus Riddle, and Randy Orton versus Jimmy Uso, and the other, enemies at the time were Drew and Roman, and we were building towards, something there. So I don't understand, if we're not building towards another Riddle Roman thing, then what's the point of that? Like, why not just bring Drew McIntyre over, or why not just bring Brock over for a face-off and have the main event be that? That's what I'm saying, man. I think that there has to be something going on that by that point, which is the week before Money in the Bank, that you might have Riddle holding a briefcase.
Yeah, it's the week before SummerSlam. Yeah, I mean, week before
SummerSlam, excuse me, yes.
Between now and then, something could happen with the briefcase in theory and Riddle. Who knows? I guess we'll have to see how things play out between now and SummerSlam. Because that's really all we're left with.
That's it.
So getting back to SmackDown here, we had Jinder Mahal and Shanky take on Viking Raiders. Very quick match. Jinder Mahal got pissed off at Shanky dancing, so he tagged himself in. Shanky then danced at ringside. Jinder went to make a tag. Shanky was not there for the tag. Raiders double powerbomb Jinder Mahal for the 1-2-3. They attack Shanky a little bit. New Day comes out. They said that they're still here. They got ass-kicking tickets. They go into the ring and they absorb an ass-kicking. Kofi gets chokeslammed by Eric. Eric then hits a knee to Woods. Then they double team from the top rope and hit a strongest slam from the top rope. Does Ivar to Kofi Kingston. Raiders stand tall again over the New Day for the third consecutive week without even a match. And then following this, we saw just a package about Corbin attacking McAfee from the crowd after Money in the Bank went off the air, which McAfee sold with a neck brace at the UFC show. But what do you make of this Viking Raiders crap?
I'm just hoping that there's no New Day Viking Raiders match at SummerSlam.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't even been able to start a match. I mean, what would the point be?
There is no point. I like when things have a point.
Yeah. So we'll move right on from that. I mean, do you see the Viking Raiders being anything more than just a heel tag team that destroys face tag teams that basically, I mean, first of all, Jinder and Shanky aren't even a face team. And then
they were like the de facto face team last night on Friday night.
Yeah, but are the Viking Raiders going to be anything more than just a team that destroys jobbing teams? Or are they ever going to climb up? Or what do you see happening there?
I don't know, man. I hate to say it. I know everyone's working hard, and you want the best for these guys because you know how hard they've worked to get even to the point that they're at. But you don't want to, I just can't get too excited about them. I really can't. I find it, and really, honestly, New Day's stuff was really childish to me. I didn't like the shaking the butts and the whole thing about being thick and all this stuff. I just didn't like it, man.
Yeah, I mean, that's what all the stuff the New Day does with the childish crap is basically why everybody doesn't like them, except for kids and whatever. But it is what it is. We'll move on from that. We had Nakamura take on Ludwig Kaiser. They advertised this as an open challenge by Gunther. Ended up being Nakamura coming out, but Gunther said he's got to get through Kaiser first. Nakamura made short work of this one. He had a nice looking sliding German suplex in the beginning. Kaiser then turns the table after a distraction by Gunther up on the apron, hit a basement drop kick, knocked Nakamura to ringside. Nakamura took control with an enziguri. He had Kaiser in the corner. Kaiser nailed a knee on him for a 2 count, but Kaiser got backed into the corner on a sleeper hold, got out, hit a double underhook slam. That was about the only offense Kaiser hit. Quickly after that, Nakamura nailed the Kinshasa for the 1-2-3, and then Kaiser ate 3 massive chops by Gunther for his troubles. And so it looks like we'll have Nakamura and Gunther for the Intercontinental title at some point coming up. What do you think about Nakamura as an opponent for Gunther?
I like it, man. I think it's a cool contrast of styles, and I find Gunther to be actually, and Kaiser to be one of the most interesting things on the show. Is it me, or did Ludwig move pretty damn well in the ring? I know in a lot of ways, he's really just a recent NXT call up, even though he's affiliated with Gunther and everything like that. I thought he looked pretty good, even in losing. I thought he kind of moved quick. He seemed to, do everything right. Maybe I'm missing something, but I just thought he looked like a good wrestler, and he was fun to watch, man. I didn't have a problem with watching him,
Yeah, I think Kaiser's pretty good in the ring. He hasn't been able to show much, but, he at least not in this match, they really didn't showcase him at all. They kind of had him jobbed to Nakamura, but I think Nakamura and Gunther is a good matchup. You got somebody who can move, got some speed and athleticism in Nakamura, and Gunther can sell for him, and Gunther can destroy him as well. Nakamura can also sell well for Gunther, so I think that it's a good matchup. It's another, even though Nakamura works more of a strong style, he's still somebody who has some elusiveness and some athleticism and some movement in the ring. And I think that it'll work well with Gunther. So we'll see that coming up most likely. And I'm sure Gunther will probably retain against him, but Nakamura is a credible opponent, former Intercontinental Champion. So no problems there with me. Next up.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, we had Liv Morgan come out for a promo. I'll tell you what, I don't appreciate Liv Morgan's promos that much, but I do think that having Michael Cole in ring with her actually helped her in this situation. He kind of guided her through it a little bit, and she's jumping up and down, getting excited. He's making sure he's saying live, live, live. Now he concentrate on this. And I think when they do promos like that with her, it works a lot better than when she's in the ring. I don't want to say she gets lost, but she kind of ends up sort of trailing off into different areas instead of executing the point of the promo the way it should be. And I felt like having Michael Cole in ring with her this time helped her deliver what she needed to deliver and make the point she needed to make. Then, of course, she got interrupted by Natalya and Ronda. But what'd you make of Liv Morgan's first promo on Smackdown as the Smackdown champion?
Yeah, so it's funny. I thought she came across as way more confident tonight, or last night, on that promo than she did on the one on Raw right after winning the title. She had a little bit more of a seriousness to her and not so much of a giddiness to her, where she was like, hee. She still did a little bit of that, but I thought that she was, how Sasha Banks stands there and acts like I'm ready to fight, and she puts both her fists down kind of by her hips and just looks very serious. When Natalya was walking out, Liv had a very serious look on her face, like a champion would. And I really liked that, man. I liked seeing Liv like that. And I want to see her a little bit more serious, almost like in a certain way how Riddle went from goofy to kind of more of a killer with a killer instinct. I'd like to see Liv go about her stuff that way now that she's champion. And I feel like she was, just looking great and looking a little bit more confident on Friday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be too hard on somebody for, just winning a championship for the first time and being given the Money in the Bank briefcase win and championship win in the same night, 2 nights before, and then cutting a promo on Raw. But, you know, having the crowd reacting to you and then you basically getting into tears and jumping up and down and not being able to say what you need to say, just to me doesn't demonstrate confidence or somebody who even should be a champion. And then move to Friday. I think Cole, you know, there was a point where she started the jumping and stuff like that, and Cole really told her, like, hey, calm down. And I firmly believe somebody was speaking into Cole's ear saying, make sure she doesn't get too emotional out there, because it's, you know, it's just not the presentation of a champion to be so surprised that you are the champion. You know what I mean? Like, when you're a champion, your attitude should be damn right I'm the champion. Who's trying to come for me? Because I'll take you on. And just to me, I understand the initial excitement, but I was glad to see that it was more reeled in on SmackDown. Then, of course, we get Natalya to come out here talking about how Liv should thank her because she's the one who hurt Ronda Rousey to begin with. Ronda comes out. She starts
exactly the same thing that she said on Raw, by the way. Exactly the same thing.
Exactly the same exact thing. Then we have Ronda come out, talk a bunch of crap. They get in the match. This one was really short. I mean, Ronda attacked Natalya. She used the rope on her a little bit. Then we had a Samoan drop onto the apron ringside by Ronda. Ankle lock locked in on the apron. Then we get an ankle lock in the ring. Natalya tries to get out of it, but Ronda turns it into an exploder suplex and locks in the ankle lock once more for a third time. She sits out, and that leads to a tap out by Natalya. This was like a 3-minute match. Natalya totally got squashed, and this leads to Liv and Ronda being in a rematch at SummerSlam for the SmackDown Women's title. What did you make of the apparent burial of Natalya tonight in terms of her being a championship contender, and the rematch between Rousey and Liv? And I'll add to that a third question. Do you think it's going to remain a one-on-one match, or do you think we'll get another woman added to it? Maybe a returning Flair or Bayley.
Yeah, I think you're going to get some interference in that match of some sort. Maybe Charlotte Flair, you know, getting back payback on Ronda Rousey for what she did to her, type of thing. At the I Quit match, man, I didn't even hear them say this is for a rematch at Liv Morgan. When did they say this, or was it just after the fact?
They never said it. It was something that I surmised just when I saw that the match was on the rundown. And I was telling everybody, like, listen, whoever wins this one's going to rematch her at SummerSlam. And then sure enough, on social media, about 10 minutes after SmackDown was over, it was announced that it would be a rematch, Ronda and Liv at SummerSlam. So, and honestly, man, if that's a one-on-one match without interference, I see Rousey winning. If it is with interference and all that, that makes sense. But then again, you're taking your champion, Liv Morgan, who won by a cash-in and a roll-up on a wounded Rousey, and then she's only retaining due to the interference by Charlotte Flair, which is okay because it protects Ronda Rousey a little bit, but it also definitely causes an immediate feud with Charlotte Flair and Liv Morgan, in which case I don't see Liv Morgan making out of that feud with the title.
So the plan of taking the title off Liv that quick, I think just isn't going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen, man. I think there's too many people that are happy about it. and too many people that will be disappointed if she just loses it that quickly, especially to Rousey, who, you know, hasn't exactly wowed the fan base. So, you know, do we get a heel turn from Rousey before this match, or do we not?
I thought we were going to get a heel turn on SmackDown, and we didn't. We got a heel turn from somebody else that we'll talk about in a minute. But yeah, I don't know where they're going with Rousey. I don't like her. You know, it was Rousey's idea to put Liv over as the champion at Money in the Bank. That was 100% Rousey who pitched that to creative, and they worked it out. And it's obviously to me, I think Money in the Bank has become more of a thing. You know, we all like to say, oh, well, Lynch is going to win this one. Rollins is going to win. They don't want the big stars winning it. They want the up-and-coming people who need that Money in the Bank win and, you know, need that push. Now, I'll argue Theory was not the right guy, but, you know, a lot of people will agree with me, and it doesn't even matter. He won. Now, on the women's side, they did this for the fans 100%. They had Liv Morgan win this one, and they had her win the title because they knew that Rousey was struggling as the champion in babyface capacity. You put it on Liv Morgan, you can get the fans happy, but at the same time, you get a lot of heat for whoever beats her. So if Flair beats her and adds to her, you know, record number of title reigns, that makes sense. If Bayley beats her, that makes sense. Really, nobody else on the SmackDown roster makes sense to me. But I can see them taking it off of her earlier just because that's what we've seen happen a lot with the Money in the Bank. You know, Nikki ASH won last year, cashed in, won the title. Somebody who the fans were a little bit behind when she first started that gimmick until it just got old. And a similar thing could happen with her. I think Liv has a little bit more staying power than somebody like Nikki ASH or Carmella or anybody like that. But at the same time, I still think this is a kind of an experimental thing they're doing with Liv Morgan. And they're always going to have to go back to their people like Flair and Bayley in the title picture and get Liv back in the position to chase. I don't think Liv is a permanent top title contender. I think she's more of a top mid-card person who can sometimes fit into the title picture, in my opinion. Right now, she's the champion. That's great. I'm supportive of that, especially if it means that Ronda Rousey is not. But about all I got to say about that.
Yeah, prize like Bayley returning and fucking it up for Ronda, and then you get a Ronda Bayley feud. You might have something like that too that we're not even expecting coming. You know.
All right. Well, that's what we got going on with the SmackDown Women's title. We're going to take another break here and finish up talking about what happened on SmackDown. We'll be back right after this.
The Beyond the Mat Podcast. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Beyond the Mat Podcast.
All right, so Liv Morgan, your champion, rematch against Ronda Rousey at SummerSlam. Very possible that we could see a return of Charlotte Flair or Bayley, which I think both are needed back on television, and they can get involved in that. So moving on here, we got Max Dupree with his Maximum Male Models and the 2022 tennis collection. This stuff was pretty funny. I thought it was hilarious when Mansoor posed like he was serving, and they were just, look at the forearm. Oh my God, what a forearm that was. And then they said he's got a long stroke, and Graves like, hey, long stroke, you can't teach that. And, you know, Max Dupree's talking about his stroke and all this stuff. But I just thought that the commentary and the talking and stuff in that was good. I think that LA Knight, Eli Drake, Max Dupree, whatever you want to call him, is somebody who is in this role now, and he's doing really well in it. And once this whole shtick is over, whatever they have him do after that, he's showing that he can play ball and he can do what they need him to do. He's very entertaining. Obviously can work well in the ring as well. So, but the point here is the Maximum Male Models brought out their tennis collection. What did you think of this segment?
I don't know, man. It seems like a little unpopular to like it for some reason, according to some of the pundits I hear, but I think it's freaking great. And I cannot wait to see these guys wrestle in the ring as a tag team with Max Dupree as the manager. I cannot wait. I think that this has more to it than the Viking Raiders, as a tag team. If you want a heel tag team that can make some noise, I think this is a great spot for Mansois and Massey. And I really like it. I think it's really funny. I think LA Knight is great. Max is great. And I think it's fantastic. I mean, are you excited to see them in the ring, or is it just me?
No, I'm excited to see where they're going with this. I don't know if excited's the word, but I'm intrigued. And I think that I don't think there's anything wrong. I think what they're doing is entertaining and it's pretty funny, and I like it. It's not like it's almost good.
It's almost like a comedic Judgment Day in a certain way. Like he's saying, if there's anyone that wants to join our stable, like if they get a few wins under their belt and they start kind of showing like, hey, you might see some other guys be like, hey, I want to be one of these male models. Shit. You know what I mean? I want to be in this stable. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. I think that is it clear that this is a heel team?
Yeah, definitely. All full of themselves, super arrogant, super cocky. And, Dupree is so smooth with his words. I mean, some of the phrases that he was using, you can see the incredible form and the way he titillates everyone on the runway, and just so smooth with the delivery of everything. You could tell this guy's got like, a Paul Heyman level of acting skill, with what WWE does,
Yeah, no, he's outstanding at it. I'm looking at the face and heel list here, and it's listing Max Dupree as a face.
Wow, really?
But it's confusing because it says that he started as a heel. On May 20th, he on Smackdown as a face. I don't know what the hell this list is telling me. But on the same list, you got Bobby Lashley, Ali, Moss. So I don't know what the fuck they are, but if they are babyface, then the Viking Raiders would probably freaking kill them, depending on because of the way that they've been presenting the Viking Raiders. But I want to see that Massey and Mansois get in the ring and do something. I don't know what they're going to show next. The tennis collection, where they're going to show the beachwear now. The volleyball collection.
It's so funny. Yeah. It's so good, man. It is so good. I don't care what anyone says. It's good.
It's good, and I'll tell you the part of it that's making it good is that the talent involved in it are embracing it, and they're doing it. Max Dupree's doing it. Mansois is doing it, and Massey is doing it. You know what I mean? They're not just going through the motions. They look like they're enjoying themselves doing that stuff. I'm sure they're being paid very well to do it. And, let's just face it. What were Mansoor and Mace doing before this?
Nothing.
And now they're on SmackDown, using badminton rackets as tennis rackets or whatever the hell, and pulling tennis balls out of their pocket. I just think that it's an entertaining thing to do, and they're doing a good job at it, and it's going to get them somewhere, whether it's, not necessarily in this gimmick, but, they're working well. And I'll tell you the other thing. Mansoor, the artist formerly known as Mansoor, he looks like he is jacked. Like he looks
in good shape.
He looks like he's in tremendous shape. And the first week that they did last week, it didn't feel like Marseille was that into it, but he was really into the tennis posing the other night. I mean, I don't know. I enjoyed it. I think it's a good comic relief segment. It's certainly better than Happy Talk or, something like that.
It's terrific. It's terrific, man. It is terrific. I love it. I just don't understand how you can not find humor in these guys with the tennis rackets. They barely know how to serve or swing a tennis racket at all. And they're like, wow, look at the form on these guys. Look at, it's incredibly creative and funny. And, you had that real working website, MaximumMaleModels.com. I went to it. I'm sure many, many other people went to it. It was, this is a terrific thing, man. And I can see these guys, with Dupree as the manager, doing something as a tag team. And I don't think it's just going to die like a lot of other people do.
I don't either. I think it's going to keep going on. And, it's going to be interesting what they do. Nah, Max Dupree's a heel. The list I was looking at was not updated. Max Dupree is a heel.
Yeah. So they're a heel team. This is great. I mean, this is great. Look, if the Street Profits do happen to get those belts off the Usos, which, look, maybe it's a possibility. If they do, I would love to see the next opponents be these guys.
I would just like to see the Street Profits get those belts off the Usos, to be honest with you. Like, I think that number one, they're probably, aren't they like the only freaking tag team out there that's babyface right now, other than the Mysterios?
Yes, which I think leads us into our next segment, right?
But we were going to go into Lacey Evans next, but...
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought the Usos were next. My bad. There we go.
Yeah, the Usos, we'll get into them in a second, but we had scheduled tag match here. Lacey Evans and Aaliyah were supposed to take on Baszler and Shotzi. When I first saw this, I was, it's nice to see Shotzi get, back on TV. It seemed like she had a rough week. People were being pretty hard on her about the Money in the Bank ladies match. She deleted her Twitter because of people were just coming at her. People got to understand that that's a tough match for even the seasoned veteran to do. You got 6 other people in the match that night, and not a match that she's very experienced in. And there's a lot of spots to hit. She was clearly featured like pretty heavily, at least in the beginning of that match. Yes, she botched a bunch of spots, and, that's a shame. And thank God nobody got hurt. But, I mean, geez, man. The amount of backlash she got was really kind of unsettling to me. And, it caused her to get off of social media. I mean, she's on Instagram still and posts a story. But regardless, I was happy to see that she was going to be on TV. Turns out we did not see her. Aaliyah made her entrance first. Then Lacey Evans came out. Reaction wasn't good enough for her, went back. At first, everyone's like, what the hell is she doing? Aaliyah's like, what the hell is she doing? Because she took forever to come out the first time. Then she goes back out. Second time comes out. Comes out a third time. She looks really disappointed, gets on the mic, says she's disgusted with the reaction the fans gave her. She said that, people should respect her and that these people need to stand up and give her an ovation, but they're probably too lazy from eating too much pulled pork, getting all kinds of you suck chants, tells the crowd to go to hell. And then when Aaliyah says, wait a minute, we have a match, let's go. And then she just gives the women's right to Aaliyah and gets out of there. So we have Lacey Evans turning heel here. Aaliyah getting completely embarrassed with the women's right there on TV, but that was her job that night. And that seemed to be a common theme on SmackDown. It was like we had Rousey bury Natalya, the Viking Raiders bury the New Day, Lacey Evans bury Aaliyah, and then we had the Usos match later, and McIntyre buried his opponent. It's like everybody who lost tonight really lost. But what did you make of Lacey Evans and the heel turn? I personally saw this coming. It was what I always kept saying was going to happen. She's going to lean on her past and say, listen, you guys, need to respect what I've done. You haven't gone through what I've gone through, yada, yada, yada. That's basically what she said. And she's now a heel that blames the fans for not supporting her the way she feels she should be.
So you actually pointed this out on May 6th of this year. When you thought it was very interesting when Lacey Evans came out on SmackDown that night and they said, please rise and show your respect for Lacey Evans. Now, I've heard other people in the community, obviously not you saw this coming, but I've heard other people in the wrestling, podcasting community, whatever, they've said, the BS about being a veteran and the sob story, it didn't get over, so they had to turn her heel. Nope. They actually planned this the entire time. And the way is because of the stand and show respect as she enters the ring for Lacey Evans. And she comes out and everything's all happy and awesome and everyone's clapping for her and cheering for her. But that was a prerequisite for this to happen, because this time they weren't standing and showing the proper respect, even though they were. Like, it was fine. Like, she was just making a normal entrance. No one's... you know what I mean, Matt? Like, you saw this coming from a mile away back in May.
Yeah, and back then they did the ring announcer bringing her out and telling everybody to stand. But not only that, when she got the mic and cut her little promo the first time, I kept saying, at face value, the promo was what it was. But if you read between the lines, she's telling people to get off their butts and stand up. And, if you just read between the lines a little bit, it felt kind of heelish and kind of, self-righteous and, look at me, you need to respect me. And I could see this come from out. And was it always planned to happen right now? I don't know. I definitely feel like they saw her getting booed every time that she climbed the ladder at Money in the Bank and said, this is the perfect time to do it. And so they did it. And we now have another heel on SmackDown, which, you got Baszler and Shotzi already they got a lot of heels on SmackDown, but that gives you somebody for Liv to feud with if she is going to continue to be the champion after SummerSlam and we don't get a soon return from Bayley or Flair. So it is what it is. I felt like this was coming from the jump, and
Yeah, but again, I don't think that this was, oh wow, no one likes her, let's just change her, this isn't working. I think this was, again, always planned from the start.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with the military thing didn't get over, so let's now turn her. I think it was always they're going to turn her, even if everybody embraced her character, they just would have waited a little bit longer. They had the perfect point and they might even have planned this out. They knew everybody was behind Liv. They were having Liv winning. Liv basically gave it away by crying on her entrance to the ring, and so every time Liv climbed the ladder, people were excited. Every time Becky climbed the ladder, people were excited. Every time Lacey climbed the ladder, people were like, I don't want to see that. And they, picked a good time to appropriately turn her heel because she had a legitimate reason to be upset with the fans, I guess, given the fact that they clearly did not want to see her retrieve that briefcase. But up next, we had Lotharios and Usos. This was a quick match. They played cat and mouse to start it off, in and out of the ring. Went both teams eventually. The Lotharios took control with stereo knees to Jimmy and Jey Uso. Jimmy enters the ring, gets a hip toss from Umberto, but Usos turn the tables real quick, hit a pop-up Samoan drop. Angel then comes in to break up a pin, goes for a springboard move to ringside, runs right into a super kick. Up on the top rope, Umberto gets knocked down by Jimmy, and then Jimmy nails him with a super kick, and the Usos hit the 1D finisher for the win. Then we have the Usos. So they make real quick work of the Lotharios. I feel like the whole point of this was to get the Usos out here, and interviewed by Caleb Braxton, who says that they were accused of cheating in their match with the Street Profits, which I wouldn't put it as cheating. I would put it as the ref made a mistake, which is the same thing that Jay said when asked the question. And then we were informed that the Usos and Street Profits will have a special guest referee for their SummerSlam rematch. So I don't know if there's much more to say about the match than I did. If you have anything to add, go ahead. But also, the only thing
I wanted to say about the match is I do want to say, the Lotharios are actually pretty damn good in the ring, man. And I know this was really quick, but, the way they take moves, it looks really vicious. Like, where one of the Lotharios, I think it was Angel, jumped off the outside of the ring to do an attack on I think it was Jay, and he got super kicked. And, there was a lot of quick action in the match. And I think the Lotharios are really good wrestlers, man. I just think they're freaking awesome to watch. I really do. I think they're ultra talented.
I do too. I've always said I really like them. I've always said I always mention about the house show I went to when half the roster wasn't there, and they wrestled a lot on that show, and they did a hell of a job. And if it wasn't for this kiss cam bullshit and some other things, they could really, be a featured team, but there's one dominant team now, and they don't get a shot to really do much. And so
they could just join the Maximum Male Models at some point.
Yeah, they should. They'd be perfect for that. But Usos and Profits special guest referee. Who do you think it's going to be?
Oh, I have no idea. All that kept coming to my mind is just like a mind block type of thing. I just keep saying, I know it's not going to be him, but it's Miz. I know it's not going to be Miz, but we just saw him as a special guest referee. Obviously, it won't be him. I don't know, man. Could it be
think closer to the bloodline. Think closer to the bloodline.
Sami Zayn.
That's who I think it'll be.
That's really interesting, man.
The honorary Us.
Yep, and he's going to screw it up.
Or it could be Solo Sikoa, but I doubt that they would debut him as a special guest referee at a pay-per-view like that.
Nah, yeah, no, it's going to be Sami Zayn. And but why would that be if they're accusing them essentially of cheating? Why would they get the benefit of having the honorary Us as the referee? You know what I mean? Like, you would think it would be someone who would be almost hostile to the Usos because, hey, you cheated to win the last match, which, like you said, is the stupidest thing, man. It's not cheating. That's like saying you cheated to win the baseball game because the pitch was 3 inches off the plate, but they called it a strike and you lost the World Series. Well, the Dodgers cheated. No, they didn't cheat. Just the ref or the ump was wrong. There's a bogus pass interference flag that wins a game for the Patriots or whatever. No one says they cheated. They said they got the benefit of a bad call. So,
Yeah, exactly. They scripted that poorly for Kayla, and it just made her. It didn't make her seem very
credible.
Yeah, credible at that point. And Jay made a point to correct her, but yeah, I think Sami Zayn. I don't know how they get there. Maybe they have a match to decide who it's going to be. Who the hell knows?
Yeah, I just don't understand why, again, it would be a friendly ref to the Usos, but I guess, yeah, that's fine.
I mean, maybe Zayn's the referee, and then Solo Sikoa interferes or something, and he get. I don't know. I'm getting too into the weeds with that one. I think Sami Zayn will probably be the guest referee.
Yeah. Solo Sikoa is also wrapped up in a bunch of stuff on NXT. He's got a feud going on with, I actually forget who, but it's someone important on NXT that he has something going on with right now. Whatever.
Yeah, there's just so much rumor of him being called up. All right, so next up we had the main event, Drew McIntyre and Sheamus in a match where the winner would be facing Roman Reigns at Clash of the Castle, or whoever the undisputed Universal Champion is at the time. The Brawling Brutes come out with Sheamus. Sheamus enters the ring, starts coughing, saying that he's sick, might have COVID, needs to get tested. Michael Cole says, please don't cough, cover your mouth if that's the case. I think it's a little bit ridiculous that they wouldn't mention COVID on television, period, for the longest time, and now it's part of a storyline. So I'd like to hear what you think about COVID being written into a storyline. But first, we'll go to the match. We ended up with Butch fighting Drew. This was a pretty quick match here. Overhead belly to belly by McIntyre on to Butch. Butch scraps, tries to fight a little bit back. He locks in a guillotine on McIntyre. McIntyre Glasgow kisses his way out of that. Goes and knocks Ridge Holland off the apron. Butch hits a knee from the top rope, but McIntyre gets up pretty quickly, dodges an attack, hits a neck breaker, sets up for the Claymore, turns Butch inside out with him, and finishes him with the 1-2-3. About a 3-minute match there for Butch in the main event. Ridge Holland goes to attack Drew after the match and gets a Future Shock DDT for his troubles. Looks like we're going to get Drew and Ridge Holland next week, and we'll have to wait to see who is going to be facing the champion at Clash of the Castle. But I'm pretty sure we're going to have a SummerSlam match with Drew and Sheamus. So what are your thoughts on the COVID storyline and Butch being in the main event and only getting a 3-minute match out of it?
Well, first and foremost, you could tell they were a little pressed for time because Drew came out as the Usos were still in the ring. You could tell they were just kind of rushing and they needed this to be quick, just based on the timing and knowing that Drew had to cut the top rope and there was that whole thing that was going to happen. So honestly, man, with the COVID thing, I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. I actually thought it was kind of funny when he was like, "Oh, me thinks me got a case of the COVIDs." It was just kind of stupid and it was silly. And I actually, found it quite funny. I didn't think it was like a major, until I saw people complaining about it, as people complain about everything nowadays. I really didn't think it was that big of a deal.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I just thought it was like a comical thing that Sheamus kind of just said, it was just like, "Oh, me got the COVIDs now." Like, okay, you got the COVIDs now, dude. Like, that's it. So I don't know, bro. I actually liked seeing Butch tossed around the ring. I thought it was kind of entertaining, to be honest with you. I, really no problem with this being quick. I mean, what else would it be other than quick with, Drew and the way he's been so dominant? So no problem with it whatsoever, and thought it was actually, kind of good. And I liked Drew cutting the rope at the end and all that. I just, I kind of don't understand why we're doing the Clash of the Castle, 2 months ahead, but okay.
I think it's mainly to set up the feud with Drew and Sheamus, to set up a match that matters for SummerSlam, and then you get yourself ready for Clash of the Castle after Drew beats Sheamus at SummerSlam, build up to that match. So I just think it's a way for them to drag on the Sheamus and Drew feud and keep something interesting for what lies ahead. Obviously, everybody knows that it's going to be Drew at Clash in the Castle. They're just trying to, make some kind of storyline go with it, rather than Drew just saying, I get that match. And then so we'll get a good match between him and Sheamus, and then he'll defeat him, and we will see how they build up for Clash of the Castle afterwards, I guess. And as far as the COVID thing, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just thought it was interesting that they included in their storyline, given the fact that they've stayed away from mentioning it for so long. And Butch being in the main event, although short, at least gives him a chance to be in a main event. And, he got beat as quickly as he should have by a champion contender, being a small, lower mid-card guy at the time. Just because he was an outstanding wrestler in NXT doesn't mean that they're bringing him in to be the same character on Smackdown. So it fit his character just fine. I didn't have any problems with any of this. I just thought that it was a little bit, I'd say, sometimes when they do this, like just with the Gunther open challenge not actually being an open challenge, and then this match being for the Clash of the Castle, but it not. And there was even people saying, oh, well, McIntyre beat Butch and they didn't say anything about the Clash of the Castle. The match was obviously not for Clash of the Castle once Butch got involved. It's not like if Butch won, he was going to go to the Clash of the Castle match. It was a substitute at the last minute for a match that really meant nothing, just to, add some kindling to the feud between McIntyre and Sheamus and his crew. That's all it was. And then we had, the Future Shock DDT on Ridge Holland at the end. Probably going to get a Ridge Holland and Drew match. They're heating up Drew a little bit here to beat these other two guys, to beat Sheamus and get ready for the title feud going into Clash of the Castle.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but like you said, there was a lot of things that you thought were going to happen that didn't. The Shayna Baszler match didn't happen. With the Aaliyah, Lacey Evans, that didn't happen. You had a lot of things that just didn't happen. Even Austin Theory's cash-in didn't happen. That they were kind of, oh, is it going to happen? No. There was a lot of psych on this show. But honestly, man, it was fine and it was enjoyable. And I just like to see, hopefully in upcoming episodes of Raw and SmackDown, a little bit more meaningfulness to things that go down, and not just, we're just kind of buying time,
Yeah, I mean, I think on this one we got a heel turn from Lacey Evans that was eventful. We got the match between Nakamura and Kaiser to set up the IC title situation. The Viking Raider stuff basically makes no sense. The Max Dupree stuff's entertaining. The Natalya match got her out of the picture and set up the Rousey and Liv match. And then this Drew and Sheamus and Butch stuff at least got us in a direction where we know that it's going to be Drew and Sheamus for this match. We just didn't get anywhere with it. So, there was some storyline development here, but, nothing really that heavy. So I don't have much more to add about SmackDown. Do you have anything else to add before we go to our trivia question for the night?
No, good show.
All right, so we'll go to our trivia question, and it's going to be regarding the U.S. title. Question is, the U.S. title in its current incarnation being the WWE U.S. title, not including its WCW versions or versions prior to that. It has had 101 total champions in all of its incarnations, but in its current incarnation as the WWE U.S. title, who has the longest title reign?
Ooh, that's very interesting. I'm going to take a wild guess and say The Big Show.
Take another guess.
The Miz?
One more.
Jeez, that's a really tough one, man. I know it's not Cena. I'll just say Booker T for fun.
The answer is Dean Ambrose. Held the title for 351 days.
Wow.
Other guys who have held it for a long time. MVP actually had it for 343 days. Rick Rude 378, but this was WCW. Lex Luger held it in WCW for 523 days. But
was the Miz even close?
Miz, let's see.
So I know he had it for a while.
Miz had it for... I was surprised MVP had it for as long as he did.
Yeah. It's a long time.
Ric Flair had it for 252. Shelton Benjamin, 243. Steve Austin had it for 240, as did Cesaro. Jimmy Snuka, 233. Miz is not top 10.
Wow. I'm just curious how long he did have it for. A Miz U.S. title reign. Let me look.
Yeah, the Miz had it for 224 days, which would put him just probably at number 11. Jimmy Snuka had it for 233 at number 10. But that's about all we have for tonight. I'd like to thank Brad for joining me. Thank all you guys for listening to us very much. Remember, follow us on Twitter at BeyondMattWWE. Shoot us an email, matt@beyondthemat.com. We're on all podcast platforms, of course. Leave us a 5-star rating or review if you have a chance. And patreon.com/beyondthemat. We'll get rid of those ads for you. Do you have anything else before we let the listeners go, Brad?
No, I can't wait for Raw on Monday.
All right, me neither. And we will see you guys soon. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Mat. Remember to subscribe so you don't miss a show.